Welcome into the Nittany Game Week podcast. After they outmuscle Illinois, it was a real flex from Penn State. And guys, Tom Bradley, Jay Paterno, Todd Snowski. Look, this is my favorite. Jay, I know all the Italian meals you sat down to, right? You get the bread, you get the oil to get you started. And this is the main course of the season. I love it, right? We're right into it. A really big time 5-game stretch where they have 3 ranked opponents. They take care of Illinois. Your impressions of the win over the 19th ranked team in the country, 21-7.
Well, I thought it was good that they said we're going to run the ball, and they did it, and they controlled the tempo of the game, kept their defense off the field, which makes life a lot easier, and then they got Illinois behind where they had to throw, and that allowed the pass rush, which has really not been there this year so far, to emerge. So I think a lot of good things came out of it.
I think you're right on with what you just said, especially getting there with 4 now. If they can get there with 4 and have the extra guys to do things in the secondary, that's going to help, number one. Number two is when you can run that football, and I think that defense is awful good. And then now they're resting a little bit on the side, watching, hey, just signal, no, there's another first down. Okay, let's go sit down a little bit more, rest a little bit. If you can do that and rest them, that defense is tough.
So a couple of things that I want to discuss with you guys about that Illinois performance. One is, Jay, you mentioned they wanted to run the ball, and they were able to. That's important. When you can execute what you wanted to do and what you see on tape and you think you can do, that's a confidence builder for your team. And then, Tom, you're an opponent, and you see Nick Singleton run through that hole as hard as he did, or you see him chip a blocker, catch the ball, and then run over another guy, and it's not just him. Then you got Katron Allen. What are your defensive guys doing when they see that tape and they see how hard the offensive linemen and the running backs are coming at you?
There is nothing worse defensively than to be playing and letting somebody run the ball down your throat. That is the worst thing. It's like the violation of defense. You can understand a big pass play or that happens or a screen pass, but when someone's taking the ball, especially when you know they're running it and they're still running it, that's when your manhood's kind of got taken away there.
And on your side, Jay, the guys are walking a little taller. They're standing up a little straighter. When it comes on the offensive side, they show up to practice, and they're like, what do you got for us this week, Coach, right?
I mean, you look at Michigan last year. Michigan came into Penn State, and they ran the ball 32 times, and they won the game, and they walked off the field feeling, at the end of the day, football is a physical football game, and people love that physical nature of it. And throwing the ball 50 times is not, to a lot of people, is not, quote, football. When you can run the ball like that, and I think that's essentially what Penn State was doing on Saturday night, was to just run the ball, because they're going to need to do it. This is a league where you're going to go to Purdue in November, you're going to go to Minnesota in November, you're going to be playing Ohio State in November, Washington in November. You may need to run the football to win some of those games.
Well, you could sense it afterwards. The kids were really excited. I mean, the offensive line was asking for more run plays. They ran in obvious pass situations, 3rd and 7. They were just committed to it. It was really, really impressive. Also impressive, the crowd. I mean, it was loud, and it was great. They were a real big factor. Coach Franklin said they affected maybe 7 different plays, different kinds of bad snaps or penalties, that type of stuff. Even happened on a punt, Tom. So, as you're facing that kind of crowd and that kind of noise level, that's intimidating.
It's hard to practice for. I know you bring the sound out to practice. It's just not the same. It's not the same feel. You bring that sound and the music or whatever loud but it's totally different when you're in the game's going, you're getting tired, you're getting worn down, and then that crowd's just getting warmed up. So it was really impressive.
I mean, Urban Meyer told me last year, he said, when you play Penn State at night, he said he's been to LSU. This is louder. It's worth 7 points to Penn State.
So we go from physical play to just chaos in the stands to LA vibes. Chillin' Tom Bradley, UCLA, former assistant coach at UCLA. Tell us about, look, we don't have enough time on the podcast. That would be a really good podcast, though. But some of the LA stories that you got out there.
No stories from LA.
Well, what was it like, though? I mean, it was really, like you have told us many times, just a complete culture, shock
yeah, it's
and
totally,
change,
it's
right?
totally different, from the west to the east coast. But I'll tell you what, one of the things they do have, they have some great athletes out there, and that's one of the things you better be ready for, because most of the times when they come, they've got good skilled people. That's the one thing you're going to get.
I think that's one thing that everybody wants to talk about next week, but you better take this quarterback can get hot. Okay, this quarterback can get hot, and he's got guys to throw the ball to. They're not as good up front in the offensive line, but I mean, if you let them, if you don't get after him early, if you let him get in a rhythm, and he gets some confidence, it could be a tough afternoon for Penn State. Now, I think Penn State should win this game. There's no question. But, no one thought Kentucky was going to beat Ole Miss last week. No one thought Northern Illinois. You come in with your head off, your head a little bit too big and a little bit too confident, maybe looking towards next week, that kind of thing. You could have a long day.
Yeah, and that's up to the coaching staff. You got to keep the kids focused. Don't worry about being up to number 7 in the polls. Don't worry about, hey, we're going out to California, how great it's going to be to fly out to Cali in the middle of the week and go play a football game at the Coliseum. You got UCLA right in front of you. And Penn State's done a really nice job of keeping their opponent, the 1-0 mentality, right? They talk about it all the time, but they've done a really nice job of focusing on the next opponent.
I think I want to expand a little bit what Jay said, too, is that it's a type of game that, if they get the ball, get a big play, you get behind and you're chasing, that's their advantage. If the kid gets a hot-handed quarterback, they can throw the ball and move the ball, and you're behind, it could be frustrating. So it's one of those games you got to be ready for it. I think to me, it's a trap-type game. And I think if you're not mentally prepared to say, hey, we got to get out there and get after this.
You mentioned getting behind. And so two drives for opponents, right? They talked about it after the game. That's something that Coach Franklin and the staff really want to address, is giving up the touchdown on the first drive for their opponent. Happened against Bowling Green, happened against Illinois. That's frustrating because you game plan and you expect to be able to stop them on that first drive. So a team like UCLA, they come out, if they score early, it obviously builds confidence for the team, but that's going to be frustrating for Penn State if they give up an early score.
Well, I think the thing about it is this. If you look at this matchup, UCLA is going to match up in some ways better with Penn State than Illinois did. Because one of the things right now that I think Bowling Green exposed a little bit was when you can protect the quarterback and Penn State leaves their guys one-on-one, you can get them. And UCLA has better skill guys than Bowling Green does. They've got a quarterback that has been in big games, beaten USC last year, has been in some really good games, has played well at LSU against a team that's got a lot of athletes. So I think if UCLA may come in here and try and throw the ball around the yard, they're going to see if Penn State can get after them. They blitz, they'll throw hot in the flat, they'll get some things. So this is a game that I think that, you got to weather that first drive, no matter what. And if you can hold them to 3 points or get a punt, then that's a plus. But people put so much effort into that opening script that sometimes it's tough to get them because they throw some things out you haven't seen.
All right, so let's move to some fan questions or some history. Jay, you want to be the history professor this week?
Well,
off the top here, UCLA. I mean, it's been a long time since they came, but they've been to Happy Valley before.
Probably the most famous UCLA Penn State story is 1965. Tommy Prothero was the coach. Gary Beeman was a young quarterback. They come to Penn State in 65. And the security guys at Penn State, on their walkie-talkies, started hearing these conversations going. So they had a headset in the quarterback's headset, which obviously is now legal, was not legal then, and they could hear everything going. They went to Rip Engel and they went to Joe and said, hey, you guys want to listen in? And Rip said, no, we don't want to win that way, which I think is a testament to Rip Engel. Penn State ended up losing. It came out as a story. Pepper Rogers was the offensive coordinator then. He denied it. Well, Penn State got a measure of justice in 1968. Pepper Rogers, the head coach at Kansas, and Penn State beat them in the Orange Bowl. So they got a little payback on that one. But even 1967, Gary Beeman, Heisman Trophy winner, 4th ranked in the country, only a block punt really kept Penn State from winning it. Penn State went almost 3 years without a loss. Probably one of the great stretches in the history of school.
Don't give away how many games they won.
Not going to say
it's
that.
It's our Nittany trivia question.
That's exactly
that's
right.
That's our Quizmaster. Don't give away the answer.
But there's some history there, and Penn State went out to UCLA in '68 and beat them. And then the next, Gary Beeman was still there. He ended up losing the Heisman Trophy in the last week of the season when they lost to USC, and a guy named O.J. Simpson won it. So a lot of history there.
You're not kidding. I always wondered back in the day how they traveled.
Yes.
How that travel worked to get in from State College to play.
Well, it wasn't like the '23 Rose Bowl where they took a train out, so at least they were on an airplane. But I think it's fun. This is one of the things about the Big Ten, that there's going to be some new opponents and give you. We don't have the big time non-conference game on the schedule, and we don't have one for a while. But at least you're going to get some. You go to USC next year. You're going to go to you end up going to Washington, Oregon, places like that. It'll be fun.
That is neat.
And they're great venues to play. The Rose Bowl, you're going to get to play in the Rose Bowl. One of the great iconic stadiums of all time.
Yeah, I mean, think about the next 5 opponents that you got right in front of you. I mean, to UCLA, and then it's USC, and then Ohio State. I mean, Wisconsin,
Ohio State,
then Ohio
Washington.
State, then Washington. I mean, that's really cool. Not that, and then you have the more traditional Big Ten teams that you've seen. But the next 5 weeks are really interesting. It's
Well,
gonna
why is
be
that? I
some
don't
fun
think the
matchups.
coaches think it's really cool.
Well,
like,
well, we do.
the fans,
Well, put it this way:
the fans
if
think
you're
it's
Penn
really
State, you make one West Coast trip.
Yeah.
UCLA is going to Penn State and to Rutgers in the same year.
You said 4 different time zones
It's
in
their
the last 5
fourth
weeks.
time zone in 5 weeks. And
crazy.
I don't know if they could have added a mountain time zone, it would have hit all 5 U.S. time zones, and maybe they can schedule a game in Alaska and get all 6 U.S. time zones.
Well, there's some traveling fools out there.
They're almost 24,000 air miles this year, which is a lap around the equator.
That's making life a little bit more difficult for the Bruins. So, okay, so let's get to the fan questions now. The first one comes from Rocco from Pittsburgh. What's with the kicker situation? He gets right to the point. How hard is it to make a field goal? So here's how I'll preface the answer, and I'll say this was addressed in the post-game press conference. It was a question that came up, and I really appreciated it, and I liked the way that Coach Franklin answered the question. He said, look, first off, I'm not going to really get into it. He goes, Sander Sahaydak is a great kid. He's an awesome kid. He's worked really hard. He missed a couple of field goals, but he wasn't going to discuss it then because Sander deserved to celebrate the victory just like everybody else did. Made a couple of extra points. He's done a great job. He's worked really hard. And so that wasn't the time to really discuss that part of it. He said there's going to be a competition. You go back to it. They brought out Ryan Barker to kick the 3rd extra point. So we'll see what's happening with this week. It's not as easy as we would think, Rocco. And Jay has some evidence to that point. It was a tough week. Tough week for Big Ten kickers.
Yeah, 11 of 22 on field goals. In fact, I was actually at the Rutgers-Washington game on Friday night, and Washington's kicker went 1 for 4, and they lost by 3. So consider ourselves lucky at Penn State that we had 2 field goals that didn't cost us the game. I know it cost some people maybe some money because if those 6 points are on the board, they may have. And that's part, I think, what happens now with it. We've professionalized the game to an extent that there are probably some people angry that, if he makes those, they win by 20. And I don't know, the spread was somewhere north of 14.
Yeah. It also changes the way you play, though. If you make one, you're got a 2-score lead.
Yeah.
You're not doing exactly the same things.
But at the end of the day, you won the game.
Having coached that back in the day when I did have all the specialty too, there's a lot more to go into. They want to blame the kicker, but a lot of times there's some other things involved. Where was the snap? Was it high? Did it throw his timing off? Was the hold right? There's a whole bunch of different things that people don't put into that equation, and you have to, until you look at it and analyze it, who you to blame it on, or to place blame on, I guess. There's a lot of different variables. It's not just the kicker.
Yeah,
all the
and
time.
you can, and then the point is, you can say, well, why doesn't the guy who does kickoffs do the field goals? Well, the guy doing the kickoff, the ball's in the tee, he's just kicking the ball. The guy that's, there's a whole different thing, and a lot of things go into that.
And that's a great point, Tom, because that doesn't usually get discussed. It's just, you make it or you miss it. And what do you do about it? And there's a lot of nuances and a lot of details
There
that
sure
go
is.
into it.
The hand comes up. Was the ball late? Did the kicker start early? Was the ball? Was it placed down right? Was it tilted too far? Where were the laces? There's a whole bunch of different things. Was it snap high, which caused his timing to go off? Don't analyze that. There's a lot of variables that go into that besides just he missed it.
Yeah, and Illinois' kicker missed theirs before the half too, which makes this a different game. So yeah, those could be big momentum plays when you have a drive and you come away with nothing.
All right, second question comes from Randy Fink, and it's Joe's statue. Do you think Penn State will ever replace Joe's statue to the campus? I vote that it should be with an exclamation point. I have no inside knowledge or window.
Nor do I. I
to
don't
this
know
one.
where it is. I mean, I get this all the time. You guys know where the statue is. I don't know where the statue is. That's going to be a decision for some people to make when they think the time is right.
Yep. I know Tom's mom on this one as well. And Randy, we appreciate the question.
It's not in my mom's garage, though. We've been accused of that.
Yes,
It's definitely not in my mom's
We've heard
garage.
that theory. So you heard it here. It's not in Sue's garage.
Well, you only have a 2-car garage.
No, my mom's, yeah, but there was a cardboard cutout of it that was in the back of the garage a number of years ago. And from the street, Because someone said, well, my neighbor saw that it's in your parents' garage. He was driving by the house and did that. I said, what are you talking
Life
about?
size.
And yes.
Meaning statue life size.
And so I went to see my mom a couple of days later, and the garage door was open, and I pulled in, and it freaked me out because, like, oh wait, that's the cardboard cutout. So I said, Mom, can you move that somewhere else so that people don't think? But anyway, that's another time, another place.
All right. So question number 3 comes from Paul from Los Angeles. Did you and Paul hang out in LA when you're at? No? Okay. How do you like your chances? How do you like our chances next week to beat USC?
Next.
USC, 11th ranked.
It's UCLA this week. Let's worry about that next week. And tune in next week, and we'll tell you.
We can take a little stab
No,
at it.
no.
You can't take a little
See,
stab.
that's the problem with you media types.
I don't
You
always
always
worry about it.
Yeah, but
Well, you're a golfer. When you are you worried about the putt on the
That's
green?
right.
I
You
got to
worried
worry about
the
my
drive.
tee times out there. There's Torrey
Yes.
Pines.
Yeah.
I got to see. I haven't even looked into it. They have club rentals. I'm going off on a tangent now. I got to come back to
I heard
it.
you got the private plane to
Yes.
take you to Pebble and
Yes.
bring you back.
Right. Okay.
Get a little In-N-Out burger.
Now we're talking.
In-N-Out
This
burgers.
this is what the podcast should be about, a show about nothing. That's what they created out in LA. So look, Paul, sorry to be continued.
Just tune in next week.
Tune
It's
in next
obviously
week.
watching.
We want to acknowledge that your question reached us. We're not going to give you an answer, apparently, about it. So, but I like our chances. Should be a really good game. I'm looking forward to it. I'll be at the Coliseum, first time that I remember visiting there. So that's going to be awesome. So, all right. So that's our podcast for this week. Really solid win over Illinois. They really flexed their muscles offensively, defensively, controlled the line of scrimmage. I think that does a lot of good things. We've already talked about it. A lot of confidence in your own building, and it really creates a lot of doubt in other people's heads as they look at the film and see, you're going to play Penn State. You better buckle up that helmet a little extra tight because they're coming at you. That was really, really impressive. And then, UCLA, let's take care of business here, they're saying. And right now, 7th ranked in the country into the meat of the schedule. And that means the meat of our podcast. For Tom Bradley and Jay Paterno and Todd Sadowski, thanks for watching. Appreciate you watching Nittany Game Week on our syndicated network of stations. And make sure you consume all of our web-exclusive content at nittanygameweek.com.